today. We've also been able to work diligently to make sure that we can get our hospitals the remdesivir that they need. That's something that the governor has tackled. With regards to our nursing homes, our most vulnerable of the vulnerable, we saw the governor take decisive action to make sure that the staff was being tested consistently, and that's something that very few places have been able to accomplish. And so that has saved lives. And of course, we're concerned with the case count. Of course, we're concerned with every single death that we see here in the state of Florida. But that's something that this governor takes seriously, and that's why he's here today, to work with these mayors to see what support we can provide from the state perspective. But it is indeed a personal responsibility, a community responsibility, and a state responsibility. And I know that together we can tackle this and come out in the end stronger than ever. Thank you, Governor, for your leadership.
Thank you. Maybe Menes can start, but in terms of, you guys were basically closed months in terms of, at least you were essential businesses for 2 months, right? Mid-March to mid-May. You worked on, you had a huge amount of input for your phase one. So you're still not, we're still not open fully. It was one step, but it's a slow process. How has businesses operating, how is that going? Getting put back to work? What's your sense on whether the spread is related to more business actions or socializing, and how do you think people are doing now that some of them have the ability to go back to work?
I think, Governor, my gut tells me that the spread was due to social activity. It started, and we saw it with young people right around the beginning of June, I think, and there were things that all kind of clashed. You had graduations, you had kids going out of school, you had college kids out of school, you had demonstrations, right, that were happening here, and thousands of mostly young people in the streets together, a lot of them wearing masks. And so, I'm not pointing my finger at any one thing, I'm just saying it's a combination of things. And then we saw images of certain businesses that were converting themselves from a restaurant into a bar afterwards, and people not wearing their masks, people not social distancing, basically, enjoying themselves. And what I said, young people being young people, And so I think that's where it started. I don't believe that it really started with businesses. I think that's what happened. It was a social activity, and so we took the steps of creating a curfew. That's one of the first things we did a couple of weeks ago, a curfew to try to curb social activity, not only in places of business, but also we also feel that there were house parties, people getting together. This community, maybe unlike other communities, a lot of your family in this community is actually in this community. We're not really spread out all over the place, and so you have your children and your grandchildren, they're all here, okay? They're not some other state. And so you tend to get together. And it's pretty family-oriented, what makes this community so great. And so I think that also, as the young kids started to socialize, then they started bringing it into the home. And then, obviously, we had to take the steps of closing those places where you came back. And so it's disruptive in that sense. I have 6 grandchildren, which 5 of them are in school. They seem to survive it, pretty well. I am not sure if obviously it's not as good as being in the classroom. Obviously not as good as being in the classroom, both from a social aspect and then and also from an academic aspect. And so the faster that we get our kids into school, I think the better. But again, we need to have the data. We need to know where it is be at in 6 weeks. We don't know what that is. And like I said, I'm meeting actually with the superintendent after we break up, and we're going to talk about putting together or having a group of folks advise us and him on steps that we need to take in order to to open up school or to keep it as virtual. I believe that what we're going to do is we're going to come up with different options, and depending on where we are, that we're here, then this is what needs to happen with those schools. Obviously, in the classroom is much better than out. Virtual, I do believe that with virtual learning, they had a huge learning curve, and it will get better, but I don't think it'll be ever as good as in the classroom. Now, I'll spin off of that conversation, and some here talked about what the economy is going to look like after, all right? And this virus obviously was a health issue, but this virus is a huge disruptor in the economy, a long-term disruptor in the economy. And, a better example of what's happening right here in this county, 6,000 of our employees are working out of home. This is, like I told you, this is about the fourth time I've come up here in the last 3 months, okay? I used to be here every single day. And I found that I'm just as productive, probably more productive at my home than I am, here. And I think a lot of employers are finding that's the case, and things are going to change. As Mayor Gelber Suarez says, we're economy based on, getting together, et cetera. One of the things that I think is going to suffer, I think that we're not going to have as many business travelers coming to Miami-Dade. That means fewer people going into our hotels, et cetera. We obviously are the cruise capital of the world. Our cruise ships are 0 passengers right now. And so we have to establish that cruising is going to be not only, going to be viable, but also it's going to be safe, because that brings in about 5 million people to my county every year. Our airport is the #1 economic generator of this town. And if you have fewer people traveling for business, you're going to have fewer passengers, and so that's going to be affected also. And then as if you look out the window here, you see a lot of buildings that are office buildings. And so the question is going to be, how many of those office buildings, which are pretty full right now, okay, and they provide tax base for us, are going to be full about a year or so when the lease is up. And a lot of those businesses have been operating from home pretty well. So, the economy is something that I'm kind of worried about in the future. It is disruptive, and usually, when you have a disruptor, you'll find a way. Some other things will take its place. But without a doubt, this virus has taught us a different way to operate, a different way of being. Also taught us a different way to teach kids. Not as good as the traditional, but it's something that we'll have to work out with the superintendent what we're going to do. But things aren't going to be the same. They're going to be different from now on.
Yeah, I agree with Ms. on the issue of the impact it's going to have across the board, and the interconnectivity, as Mayor Gelber mentioned. Those cruise lines and those airline businesses, many are headquartered in my city, and they are certainly going to be, the employees there that live in Dade County, and some that come from Broward will also be impacted as we move forward. And that's kind of the same thing that I see across at the school system. My wife, as I mentioned to you, has been a long time elementary school children, and we have our youngest, our 10-year-old daughter, who is a regular student at her school in the Dade County Public School System. There's no doubt that for the younger kids, learning in person is probably
And some are calling it the most in-demand newscast of the day. We start you off right here on Fox 10 Extra live look at downtown Phoenix there in the distance. Welcome everyone here to News Now, the Wednesday edition. 2 hours of nonstop coverage from around the country. It's going to be a packed one, so let's get right into it, everybody. I'm your host, Mike Pace. Great to be here with you. Let's show you the latest COVID-19 numbers from around the world as we get going here. We start that like every day. We see now 13.3 million cases around the globe. Here in the U.S., just under 3.5 million cases. In Arizona, more than 3,000 new cases today. That is from the latest number. Live look at the White House, everyone. We're going to take you to President Trump from inside the Oval Office. Happened just moments ago, talking about taking on MS-13 gang members and trying to eliminate them as really cause a lot of problems for our country. And you're going to hear what he has to say about Joe Biden, getting a lot of talk about that already this morning. Live look, let's go really quick to Miami. This is where they are doing a COVID-19 testing blitz. This is at the Hard Rock Stadium, right in the parking lot there. And we're being that the line is so backed up, it's a 4-hour wait, and people continue to roll right through. But let's take you back out to the White House. We have that event from President Trump, Oval Office remarks regarding MS-13, and so much more.
They think it's bad politically, but we can't have happen what's happening. But we're here today to put an update on my administration's all-out campaign to destroy MS-13, a vile and evil gang of people. We've just concluded a historic operation leading to an indictment of dozens of savage MS-13 members and leaders all across the country. So this is something that's taken place over the last few days. I want to thank Attorney General Barr for doing a great job in many ways, not just here. Acting Secretary of Homeland Security and FBI Director Wray for joining us today, and we'll be discussing a little bit about what we did and where we're going. But MS-13 has been a problem for our country for a long time. We've taken them out by the thousands. While radical left-wing politicians have fought to open borders and welfare for illegal aliens, my administration has fought for safety. We want security for our people. We want the rule of law. We want law and order. In the last 3 years, ICE has deported over 16,000 gang members and arrested over 1,000 members of MS-13. Think of those numbers, 16,000 and arrested over 2,000 members of MS-13. We've also deported a lot of the MS-13s out of our country. This week's actions by the Joint Task Force Vulcan is the most recent offense this has been a big offensive in my administration's war on foreign gangs, of which we came into this administration and we said, what's going on? We had gangs from that you wouldn't believe. More than 20 of the criminals we indicted and arrested in the past 7 days were illegals. Yesterday, for the first time ever, the Eastern District of Virginia, thank you very much, indicted MS-13 leaders on charges of terrorism. So we have the MS-13 leader on charges of terrorism, and that's a first. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr.
We're using
President.
terrorism, which gives us extra strength. In New York and Nevada, 21 MS-13 members and leaders have been indicted on charges including murder, kidnapping, and drug trafficking. The DOJ has also announced that it will seek the death penalty for a bloodthirsty MS-13 leader responsible for the despicable killing of 7 Americans, including 2 teenage girls. Over the past few days, the DOJ and DHS have made several arrests at high level in these cases, including several immigration arrests. And I want to thank Chad Wolf for working along with the FBI and with the Attorney General. They've worked very closely together at the border. And the border, as you know, is setting new records for allowing people that are allowed to come in, allowing people in illegally. We believe the monsters who murder children to be put to death. We seem to have quite a good agreement on that. These people murder children, and they do it as slowly and viciously as possible. We will not allow these animals to terrorize our communities, and my administration will not rest until every member of MS-13 is brought to justice. We've done a great job with MS-13, but now we're stepping it up even to a higher level. This has never happened before. There's never been any move like this before. Much of it's already taken place, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about it. So when Biden and the radical left want to open borders for MS-13 and others, we want strong borders. We want, as I've said, we want borders. Without borders, you don't have a country, and we have a great country. And it's coming back stronger than ever, from job numbers to every other number. It's coming back stronger than ever before. So we're going to have a great third quarter. We're going to have a great fourth quarter. And next year is going to be one of the strongest economically we've ever had. So I'm going to ask AG Barr to say a few words about the MS-13 and what we've done and what we're doing and where we plan to go. And next week we're going to have, I think, a very exciting news conference because we're going to be talking about some of these cities where the Democrats run have just lost control of the cities. So that'll be very interesting. Bill, please.
When I came into the department as Attorney General, the President made it clear that one of his top priorities to reduce violent crime in the United States was to destroy MS-13 in states. And what we've been in here discussing with the President is part of that effort, which is a Project Vulcan, or Task Force Vulcan, which is targeting the high-level players in the MS-13 operations in the United States. MS-13 is unique in this sense. They have the street savagery that you would see in a gang. It is not driven by commercial interests, the way, for example, the mafia traditionally. It's about honor of being the most savage, bloodthirsty person you can be and building up a reputation as a killer. So this, in some ways, is a death cult, and use the terror that they cause by their savagery to extort. And they've gotten increasingly into human trafficking and now narcotics trafficking. But that's a sidelight to some extent to their basic purpose, which is violence and terrorizing people. Also, unlike a street gang, they're highly organized as a transnational organization. They operate with hierarchy, with programs. They call them programs. Think of it as a crime family, essentially. And then under each program, they have different cliques. They have programs and cliques operating in the United States. While their center of gravity is in Central America, there are thousands that have come into the United States illegally. They're virtually all illegal aliens. They come in now, although it's harder to get across the border, but traditionally they've come across the border into Houston and then fanned out across the United States into different centers of activity. Today, we were talking with the President about 3 actions we took. Melgar Diaz was indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia. Time we've used terrorism charges against a member of MS-13. He was responsible for activities in 13 states, 20 cliques in the United States. He was also the person who would greenlight assassinations in the United States. Orders come from El Salvador, or the request to assassinate people go down to El Salvador, and he would greenlight the hit. We also took down, this was an HSI case in Las Vegas. We took down the Hollywood clique, which operated not only in Nevada, but also in California and in the District of New York, again, Long Island. And we took down 21 members and the leadership of that organization. And then finally, these are the New York indictees. And then finally, I announced that we are going to seek the death penalty against Alexei Sayans, who is a leader in the Eastern District of New York, a leader of MS-13 there. The President made a trip to Brentwood, New York earlier in his administration, and he met with the families, victims that had been killed by MS-13, including the family of 2 young girls who were butchered with machetes. And the person that we are seeking the death penalty against was involved in those murders, as well as the murder of 2 African Americans who they who saw on the street and thought they were from a rival gang and just butchered. So those are the actions taken. There's more coming as we can target the leadership of MS-13. We're working very closely with the El Salvadorians on this. They've been very cooperative, and we have the HSI and the FBI with operations down in El Salvador.
In past administrations, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala did not cooperate with the United States at all. They wouldn't let us bring people back. And under this administration, a long time ago, almost I would say my 2nd or 3rd day, I said, that's not going to work. They'd bring them back and they'd say, get them out of here, we're not taking them. And they don't say that anymore. They don't even come close to saying more. So the operation is going to be very good. This is probably the meanest, worst gang anywhere in the world, the MS-13 group. And a big dent is put in them. It took place over the last few days and really over the last year. Heavy on MS-13. They're an evil group of people. They're sick, they're deranged, and we're taking care of it. And I want to just thank these great crime fighters that are with us today. Thank you. It's really
U.S. Attorney from Nevada, Nick Tutanich, the U.S. Attorney from the Eastern District of Virginia, Zach Tawilek, obviously you know the Director of the FBI, Matt Albens of the ICE, Mike Carvajal of Bureau of Prisons. You might ask why the Bureau of Prisons, because they do like to try to operate out of prisons, and we have to make sure we collect intelligence in the prison system. And then Regina Lombardo of ATF, Tim Shea of D, and of course you know the Secretary of DHS, Chad Wolf.
It's like central casting. If we forgot one person.
The head of this program is John Durham Jr. from the Eastern District of New York, who has spent how many years recently, John?
I've been in the office 15, but I've been doing MS-13 for 10 years.
10 years. On Long Island, which is one of the hotbeds of MS-13 activity, or at least was.
Good luck, Jim. Good luck. That's really good. So important. It's like central casting. People are like central casting, and you're going to do a great job, and we appreciate it. And we will be meeting you in a similar vein, but a little different subject next week, and that concerns our cities, and again, people that have lost control of some of our great cities. We're going to straighten things out. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.
You talked about taking over cities earlier this week. Is that what next week's announcement is about?
You'll be seeing next week. We'll have a conference next week, and we'll tell you in great detail. Thing that I think at this point the American people want to see. They've been run very poorly, cities, whether it's Seattle, where we were getting ready to go in and they decided to go in, and that's good. Minneapolis, where we had the National Guard go in, and as soon as they did that, we straightened that mess out. They're able to do it locally with their police. Their police are good. They were told not to do anything. Or many other cases. We're doing a great job in Portland. Portland was very rough, and they called us in, and we did a good job, to put it mildly. Many people in jail right now. But we have other cities that are out of control. They're like zones. And if the city isn't going to straighten it out, if local politicians, all in this, I don't say this for political reasons, they're all Democrats. They're liberal, left-wing Democrats. And it's almost like they think this is going to be this way forever. We're in Chicago, 68 people shot and 18 died last week. We're not going to put up with that. We're not going to put up with that. So that's for our next discussion. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's go.
I get along very well with Dr. Fauci. I get along very well with Dr. Fauci. I have a very good relationship. Well, that's Peter Navarro, but I have a very good relationship with Dr. Fauci. Thank you very much.
All right, everyone. We continue on right here live for you on coronavirusnow.com, and I did clip that for you on our YouTube page, Fox 10 Phoenix. You can see it in its entirety, in case maybe you saw maybe the middle of it, came near the end and wanted to see it. Well, live right now to Illinois, you got the governor there talking about the status of Illinois. They're saying that they see a continued surge in Illinois, that they could go back to a couple phases back and start shutting down restaurants again.
One size doesn't fit all. So the Illinois State Board of Education recently released guidelines for how districts can return to in-person learning. There's room for adaptation to local circumstances in the guidance, but there are some requirements that must be adhered to. For example, face coverings, distancing, and classroom capacity requirements. In every decision into this viral threat, schools must focus on giving our children the best education possible while offering the greatest consideration to their health and the health of their families and all those who work in our schools. And as indicated by the ISB instruction, hybrid schedules and remote learning are likely to be a part of that solution. Parents should be fully engaged in understanding what policies each district is moving toward, and should be fully included in discussions of how to adapt to local and individual needs. But to be very clear here, any district that intends to disregard this guidance is gambling with the lives of our teachers and families. Districts that don't live up to public health guidelines and standards and don't make a genuine attempt to protect their communities from this virus could be held liable in the...
Welcome back, everyone, here to News Now. We're taking a listen at the Illinois update from the governor there as he is talking about the plan to reopen schools. Let's take a listen at what he has to say.
At critical ages and the very real threat of this virus. Good people with good intentions can disagree on how and when kids should go back to school. But let me be clear, I wouldn't let children return to a school where masks are not mandatory, and serious effort hasn't made to keep students distanced during the day. This should not be controversial. Remember, the degree to which communities can mitigate risk and restore more normalcy to daily life in the months ahead is, to a large extent, in the hands of the people of our state. Taking precautions, following the mitigations recommended by doctors and epidemiological experts, like wearing masks in public places and keeping some physical distance, are necessary for us to keep all Illinoisans safe and healthy. Throughout this pandemic, it's been my priority, shared by Dr. Ezike, IDPH, and the rest of my administration, to ensure that Illinois would not be too proud to evolve our path forward if new information encouraged us to do so. Months ago, when I introduced the Restore Illinois plan, I said, we can and will make this smarter as we move forward. And we're doing that today, as we have all along the way. Scientists and doctors and researchers learn new things about this novel virus every day. That fact should humble us. There's a difference between learning by questioning and sneering in the face of facts. And in a moment, as we face down a global pandemic, as our communities struggle with massive economic upheaval it has brought on, and as we renew our call for racial justice, when it comes to the unknown and the uncertain, now is a time to err on the side of compassion for our neighbors and empathy for the most vulnerable among us. On that note, I want to end with a renewed call to action. The recent science are much clearer about COVID-19. There are things that we do know and we know work. 216 studies of masking and distancing have been evaluated, and they collectively confirm that masks and distancing bring down transmission rates and the risk of infection. That is a fact. The single best thing that you can do to help our state, to help your neighbors, to help your community, is to wear a mask in public. So follow Dr. Ezike's 3 W's. Wear a mask, watch your distance, wash your hands. You can also help in another way. If one of the 1,450 contact tracers calls you, please answer. Also, Illinois, everyone, regardless of citizenship status, who needs to be tested should go get it. Our state-run community-based mobile and drive-through sites are free of charge to anyone who shows up. Private insurance and Medicaid-covered families can get tested at other locations at no cost as well. On top of listening, who has a device and an internet connection can help too. We provide county-by data on the IDPH website that will allow you to monitor how your local community is doing at reducing coronavirus spread. That allows you to spur action by your local elected officials to provide additional mitigations to reduce your local infection rate and keep you and your neighbors safe. Everyday Illinoisans with an interest in ensuring your neighborhood is seen safely through this pandemic can use this tool to hold your local officials accountable. Illinois, this journey has been easy. Coronavirus has ravaged families and has killed more than 7,000 of our fellow Illinois residents. Not a day has gone by where I haven't wished for a magic wand to rid our people of the pain, the loss, the trauma, of the last few months. But the virus is still here. Ignoring it, trying to wish it away, is not going to help us beat it. A quixotic rush to regain a shadow of our former lives today just delay a real return to normal later on. When you go out without a mask on, host secret parties, stuff your bar or restaurant to capacity warnings, ignore common sense in your worship practices, it's not a political statement. You're hurting your neighbor who is desperate to keep their business open, or your friend who has an immunocompromised child who has been inside for months, or your parents who don't have the same defenses against this virus that you may. This isn't about politics or campaigns. It's about the people that we love and care about in our own communities. Here is what I know for sure. We've seen some success, however relative, while other states are seeing surges, because the people of this state show up for science, show up for our doctors and nurses on the front lines, and show up for your community time and time again. That should give us all great pride in Illinois. We need to keep showing up for one another now more than ever. So thank you, and I'd like to now turn it over to our IDPH director, Dr. Ngozi Ezike. Doctor.
Thank you, Governor Pritzker, and good afternoon. First, let me just start off by saying that there is no more ardent supporter of the success that we have enjoyed in Illinois with respect to this coronavirus than our leader-in-chief, Governor Pritzker, so thank you for your tireless efforts. And second, a point of clarifications regarding the 3 Ws. There's not mine, it's ours. I saw it out there, and I think there's important in widespread messaging that we all use the same terms. And so I saw that and said, yes, that's a great thing, and I want not just our state, I want the country to hold on to the washing our hands and wearing the face coverings and watching our distance. So if I were to make my own, I think I could inartfully come up with something. C's, the 3 C's, cover your face, clean your hands, and the last one's a little bit harder, count your 6 feet of distance. But the fact is we are still in this pandemic. No one asked for a global pandemic to rock our world, our loved ones, to totally upend what's normal. No one asked for our daily routines to be disrupted. Nobody asked for our summer, as what we used to know as summer, to essentially be canceled or significantly changed. But the invisible enemy persists without a vaccine and without an effective cure. So yes, we made it very hard for the virus to find people to infect. And that was so key, and that's why we are sitting on the success that we have. That's why we have the lowest positivity rates for any states in our region. Less people infected meant less people hospitalized. We went from having 800 individuals a week to having under 200. And of course, under 200, 150 is still too much. But please appreciate that significant decline. Our positivity rates have come down. Our hospital admissions for COVID are lower than what they were months ago. And no matter where you go online, again, other people are sharing different facts. Illinois is always on that small list of states that's trying to get it right and maintain that. So that's great. But here's the kicker. As we opened up, graduated into phase 4, that meant that more people were out and about. And what does that mean? That means there is the greater chance of getting infected. Remember, we still don't have a vaccine or a cure. But the deal was that as we go out and try to get back to some level of normalcy, that we would have the mitigation strategies in place. And those were the 3 Ws, the face covering, washing our hands, the watching our distance. So I thank all those who have been adherent to those 3 Ws, but we need more uptake of this, and we need more participation, this key measure that is supposed to help us fiercely guard the successes that we have seen in Illinois. As the governor stated, there are multiple, dozens and dozens of reports just this week of outbreaks from a myriad of different activities, from house parties to to sports, to churches, to travel, to hotspots outside of the state. But I also want to highlight the who of many of these new cases that we're seeing. Please be aware that people, again, breaking off the age ranges in deciles, ages 10 to 19 and ages 20 to 29, they are having higher case rates ever before in this pandemic. We are following this very closely, but young people and parents of young people, please be aware. This virus is now being spread by youth, by younger people. So young people, we need you to make responsible decisions to help us continue to keep our successes and decrease and minimize spread. And parents, as additional support and leaders for these young adults, I pray that you will assist and guide these teenagers and young to make the right decisions, as everyone's decisions affects all. So looking at the numbers for the day, since yesterday, 1,187 new confirmed cases were reported to IDPH, which brings our state total to 156,693. Unfortunately, 8 deaths were reported to IDPH, which totals 7,226 deaths lost to COVID since the beginning of this pandemic. Again, as of last night, 1,454 individuals were reported to be hospitalized with COVID, and of those, 324 patients were in the ICU and 130 patients on ventilators. Our goal of increased access to testing is continuing. In the past 24 hours, 38,161 tests were resulted. And earlier this week, we crossed the 2 million test mark. We are reporting out more and more test results because more of you are getting tested. And maybe most of you are getting tested because you have identified exposure risks. Important readers, as we are out and trying to live our lives, we cannot control this situation without masking and distancing. We cannot. Number 2, if you learn that a friend or a relation or a contact of yours tested positive, you have to undergo a 14-day timeout. You need to wait at least 6 to 7 days after your exposure to get tested, because that's a better chance of actually showing a positive test result. If you find out a day after you got contacted by that the day before they were positive and you were with them just that day before, it's too soon to get a test. A 6 or 7 day window after your exposure is the ideal time to get tested, but even if that test is negative, a negative test does not buy you out of the 14-day timeout. I know that's hard to take. You're feeling fine. You got an initial test. It says you're negative, but that test is not enough to take you out of the 14-day timeout. We have many individuals that have not been positive on day 6 or 7. Up to 30% of people might still test positive or develop on day 8, 9, 10, up to day 14. So in the interest of not spreading it to other people, we have to do that 14-day quarantine. Also, if you have a positive test and you don't have symptoms, you still have to isolate for 10 days. Not having symptoms does not mean that you're not infectious and does not mean that the test was wrong. And to help the process, please, we have to be vigilant. Keep track of where you have been and who you have been around. In the event that you do test positive, that you can help identify. Contact tracers reach out to you, as you even take your own personal responsibility to reach out to those who may have been exposed. Make sure you notify your employer, your social networks, your family networks, your religious groups, your sports groups. Please be a responsible citizen and share to people who may have been exposed in case you get to them before. the contact tracers do. Cases are increasing across the country, and even in some areas in Illinois. With our local health departments, we are aggressively identifying outbreaks in Illinois to control them before they spiral out of control. I continue to salute my team at IDPH as well as all of our local health departments for their work since the beginning, but it's not over. So outbreaks are identified in several different ways. Local health departments can identify them through case investigation, and that's why it's so critical that the public cooperates with our contact tracers. When they call, we need as much information as you can provide. We're still ramping up the number of contact tracers, so we're going to have even more people making these calls, and we need your help in giving them complete information. Facilities may contact the health department to report that a group of individuals have tested positive or have symptoms that are concerning. And then IDPH also looks through our many data sets to identify different clusters. We want to identify as much as possible. We need to know where it happened, who was involved, how many people, where were the likely exposures. It can be, as mentioned, within sports settings, bars, restaurants, factories. We've seen daycares, any place is possible. Local health departments in consultation with IDPH will recommend control and outbreak response measures, which include quarantining of the close contacts. That's the 14 days from the exposure to wait and see if symptoms will occur. Testing plans are shared and improvements are needed to prevent transmission with infection control procedures in place. A few weeks ago, we announced the arrival of Phase 4, which was a testament to how well we as a state respond to this pandemic. We did it together, and we are still needing to work together to get through this. The 3 W's will lower the spread of the virus. That's incontrovertible. The important actions and sacrifices today will directly affect what school looks like in the fall. So we all have a hand to play in what our future looks like. Please bear any inconvenience that you think is associated with wearing a face covering. Bear that inconvenience to prevent much larger inconvenience down the road. I implore your support. I implore you to follow the 3 W's. I implore you to take care of your fellow resident here in Illinois. Thank you. And now a summary in Spanish. Gracias, Gobernador Pritzker, y buenas tardes a todos. Todavía existe esta pandemia. Nadie pidió una pandemia mundial robando las vidas.
All right, everybody, so they are now going to the Spanish portion. That is where we will step away, everyone. And in the meantime, let's do some of South Carolina, giving an update out there.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for coming to our historic, beautiful State House. Today we are here working for our children. The children of South Carolina are the future of our state. We have everything invested in them. We must educate every child in South Carolina. There's nothing more essential, nothing more important that we can do than educate the children of South Carolina. And try as we might, we know that virtual education is as good for most children as face-to-face, in-class education, teaching with an excellent qualified teacher, of which we have an abundance. What we need to do is take every step at our disposal to see to it that our children get back in their classrooms where they all want to be, where the teachers want them to be, where the district personnel want them to be, and all of us want to be. We must do it safely, we must do it carefully, but we must do it. Parents need to have a choice. They need to say, the districts, whether they want to go, their children to go in class 5 days a week.
Welcome back, everyone, here to News Now Live. Look at Air Force One as President Trump will soon be traveling to Atlanta a little bit later in the afternoon. He's going to be talking about and unveiling his structure plan. He talked about it a little bit yesterday during his Rose Garden speech, but this one will be dedicated to all about infrastructure, and I'm guessing that there will be some additional jabs at Joe Biden like we saw yesterday, his main opponent, the presumptive nominee for the 2020 election. And pretty soon we're going to get tape playback of President Trump talking to the media right before getting on Air Force One. So we'll feature that for you as soon as we get that tape playback, and you can watch President Trump's full remarks on coronavirusnow.com about 3 o'clock Eastern today, or right on our Fox 10 YouTube page as well. Let's continue on, and let's go out to South Carolina for President Trump to make those remarks. In South Carolina, the governor and other state officials detailing a plan to get students back in the classroom next month.
Or whether they want a virtual education at home. It must be their choice. But we must have our schools available. We have the resource. The Department of Emergency Management Division, Department of Administration is ready to assist the districts, and we must get started with these plans. We are working for our children. The State Department of Education has directed public schools to submit their completed school reopening plans for review and approval by Friday, July 17th. That's this Friday. That's 2 days from now. They have been working on them. Nothing is more essential than giving each of our children an excellent education. It is in our Constitution. We must do it. Today, I'm calling all the public school districts to submit reopening plans that give parents the option to send their children back to school 5 days a week, or parents can choose to keep their children home and receive virtual instruction. We must give parents the choice. This is the only thing that we're asking these districts to do today, is to give the parents the choice. The parents are looking to our schools. The parents pay taxes for the schools. The Constitution provides for schools. We must see that the children have these schools available. If the parent wants to send their child back to school, they should be able to do so, and to do so with confidence. If the parents want to keep the child at home, they should be able to do that and do it with confidence. Each district must allow the parents to make that choice for their children. I ask our superintendent, Molly Spearman, not to approve any district plan that doesn't give parents the choice to send their children to classroom face-to-face instruction. But let me be clear, it is the district.
All right, everybody, we're just going to step away right now. Go back to just a minute. I want to show you tape playback, President Trump speaking to the reporters.
So we're making a trip where we're going, and it won't be long. We'll be back here pretty early, discussing a lot of interesting topics. The markets are very good. The country's doing well. Jobs are growing fast. We want schools to be open, and they will be open, and they'll be open, I think, relatively on time, hopefully perfectly on time, most places. And do you have a question?
What's your reaction to your former Attorney General Jeff Sessions from Alabama yesterday?
I'm very happy that Tommy Tuberville won the race. I think he's going to be a great senator. We don't have a good senator in there right now, and Joan not doing the job. He should be doing a much better job. Certainly he doesn't represent the people of Alabama, that's for sure. So we're not happy about him at all. I don't think the people of Alabama are happy with their representation in the Senate. And Tom Tuberville is going to be a great senator. He was a great coach. I spoke to another coach last night, unrelated, and he said Tommy Tuberville was a great coach and he's a great guy. Someday I'll tell you who, but he's somebody respected. So it was a tremendous win for Tommy Tuberville, and I'm very happy about it. And also a tremendous win for Ronnie Jackson. And like it could be a tremendous win for a gentleman named Gonzalez. You know about that. That race is still a little bit going on. By the time I got involved, a lot of the votes were already cast, but I got involved really at the last moment. We think he can easily win that area. So, and two very good candidates. Reyes is a great candidate, and so is Gonzalez. But when I got involved, a lot of the votes, early votes, were cast, and it was a big comeback. It was a big comeback. So that's going to be a very interesting race. The other thing, very, very amazing, somebody you all know is Ronnie Jackson. Ronnie, Doc Ronnie, we call him a lot of different things, but everybody agrees they respect Ronnie Jackson a lot, yeah. It could happen. Antifa's no good. They're bad people, and it could very well happen.
Why do you want coronavirus data going to HHS first instead of, why make that change?
Didn't change for me. Look, they're all on the same team. We're all in the same team, including Dr. Fauci. I have a very good relationship with Dr. Fauci, and we're all in the same team. We want to get rid of this mess that China sent us. So everybody's working on the same line, and we're doing very well. We're doing well in a lot of ways, and our country's coming back very strong. When you look at those job numbers, we've never had job numbers like we have right now. So it's coming back very strong. Okay? Well, he made a statement representing himself. He shouldn't be doing that. No, I have a very good relationship with Anthony. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, that was President Trump making some remarks. We're heading to Marine One, and that was moments ago. Let's show you now live a look at Marine One right now. The power of switching feeds. This is the live look right now. Joint Base Andrews, President Trump about to head up the steps of Air Force One, heading. And so we'll have full coverage for you later this afternoon on our YouTube page at Fox 10 Phoenix. Well, let's get you to roll on here and take you back out to South Carolina, everyone, to give you more of that update as the governor and other state officials trying to get schools back in session next month.
Opening plan. I'm not going to issue an executive order on this. The legislature has spoken. The leadership is here. It is in the continuing resolution that it is the superintendents and the districts that will provide these plans for getting the children back to school. That is law. What we are asking here today is for the school districts to allow parents to decide whether they send their children back to the classroom. As of today, a number of districts are doing just that. Anderson District 5, County, Lexington Districts 2 and 5, Pickens County, among others. School districts should consider selecting the date of September the 8th, Tuesday, 2020, that's the day after Labor Day, to reopen the schools. This will allow plenty of time for the school district to complete their plans, which we presume all have started in earnest, for the school districts to communicate with parents their plans, and to other parents to make the plans on whether to send the child back to school or to choose the option of virtual learning at home. It allows the school districts time to implement new class schedules, new bus routes, pickup times, and to implement the health and safety protocols that have been recommended various federal and state officials, including DHEC and the CDC. Those guidelines, those recommendations, not mandates, but guidelines and recommendations, suggestions, are known by all. You may remember that Congress in the CARES Act sent $216 million in CARES Act funds directly to the State Department of Education for COVID-19 related expenses. $216 million. These funds are there to be accessed by school districts to pay for COVID-19 reopening expenses such as those we're speaking of now, and to ensure that our classrooms are safe and secure for students and teachers. School districts, if you have not inquired, if you've not establish needs and what you think you will have to have, please do so right away. We cannot restrict learning by forcing students to participate in remote learning when many of our students in rural parts of the state have no access to internet at home to begin with. As you know, we are working diligently on a broad plan to extend that around the state, but it's not done yet. All children, regardless of their zip code, must have the opportunity to attend in-class instruction, and it is up to the parents to make that choice. For many South Carolina's public schools provide the opportunity for parents to go to work. By working, the parents are able to provide housing, meals, economic security, and all sorts of other things for the children. But the schools also protect many of our most vulnerable children. The Department of Social Services reports that child abuse and neglect complaints received by the agency during this pandemic have gone down. That's because the children are not at school to alert the school teachers and the authorities there, the nurses and the teachers and the principals, of difficulties. We suspect that the incidents are going up, although the reports are going down because the children are not in school. And of all our school children, about 750,000 during this pandemic. As you know, the Department of Education has had a tremendous program for feeding them all during this time. It has been quite a grand accomplishment. But there are over 10,000 of those students since this pandemic began that we have not heard from their parents. They've been lost to us. We must regain that contact. And there are many more that there's only been minimum contact. That is just one more reason for the health and well-being of the students, the children, why it is so important that our schools are operating and we have in-class instruction. Children have dropped off the radar because they were not physically coming to school each day. Children have also lost valuable learning progress due to schools being closed. We know that over the summer, things that the students learn, they lose by the time they come back to school. You can imagine under current situations how difficult it is and how that is being exacerbated. We want our educational momentum to continue and to accelerate, and that means we have to get the children back in the schools. They are isolated from their teachers when they're at home, from their friends, and from their daily routines, all of which are very important to them. And we are now learning even more, some frightening things about the impact of isolation and uncertainty on the mental health and emotional stability of children. When attendance was not taken and truancy laws could not be enforced, children, for whatever reason, simply left our system. We've got to get the schools reopened. We know that no one can eliminate risk, but we've learned a lot about this disease and infection since this began. And the American Academy of Pediatricians or Pediatrics has issued grand guidance and insight into the risk and lack of risk in our school system for these young people. We can mitigate the risk to our teachers and students by being intentional and by being smart. There's not one person standing here today that will not support every possible investment in the health and safety of our citizens, including our children. As I mentioned before, the Emergency Management Division and the Department of Administration